welcome to the 4th branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. The highest form of ignorance is to reject something you do not know anything about. Ignorance is the biggest threat to any democracy. It is, however, the ignorance of the ignorance which represents the greatest danger to society. It is what turns an ignorant man into a lunatic. Thus lies the danger, the peril even of a man, a community, a state, a country, yes, even a society. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, said that the ignorance of one voter in a democracy impairs the security of us all. Indeed, it does. We've seen it, have we not? We've witnessed it. We are all living it, are we not? All men are born ignorant. Many have chosen to stay and live in ignorance. Only a few recognize ignorance is indeed the root and stem of all evil and choose to be ignorant no more. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the 4th branch program. First, a warning. This program is not suitable for all audiences. I repeat, the content of this program is not for everyone. To find out if it's suitable to you, answer the following 2 questions. Question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? Once again, question 1. Would you entrust your teenage daughter to a non-rapist? Question 2. Would you have a non-pedophile cared for your toddler? Your time is up, obviously. If you had difficulty answering either question, this program is not for you. If you answer yes to either or to both questions, this program is definitely not for you. But if both of your answers are absolutely not, this program is catered exclusively to you. You should stick around. It is enlightening, educational, and informative. Join me here on the fourth branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the fourth branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment. The past week, we have been talking exclusively about the role of the E.P.A. in our nation, an agency that was created in the 1970s, more specifically by the Richard Nixon administration, in order to address concerns by citizens and the scientific community in regards not only to the pollutions, to the industrial waste, but also to the danger of our most basic resources, water and air. As such, the Richard Nixon administration prepared a 37-page proposal and forwarded it to both Congress and the Senate, not only asking for funding in order to clean the environment, but also to help with the process of drafting guidelines, rules, regulation, legislation to preserve the environment for the sake of mankind, in order for future generations to have, at the very least, a habitat to live in. As you might have already been aware of, despite the giant leaps done in technology, in science, despite the giant leaps in progress in general, one thing remains constant up to this point. Planet Earth is the only habitat we, mankind, the human species, has. Yes, those involved in exploring the universe have given us a lot of hope. They stated time and again that they think they may have found other planets in the universe which might be able to sustain the type of lives we, the human species, require. It's all hope. But so far, there is no possibility whatsoever to verify the information. And on top of that, there is no way at all, not in the foreseeable future, to get there. Those planets are usually so far away, it would take millions of years to get there. Put bluntly, planet Earth is the only place we have. And if we don't protect it, we will go the way of other creatures which are no longer with us. It is not a speculation. It is not an assumption. All living organisms have to abide by certain rules of nature in order to stay alive, in order to survive. As we will show you shortly, Unfortunately, for some of those creatures, they didn't have any way of, one, foreseeing what was coming in terms of disasters, natural disasters, that is, catastrophes. But even if they did, and as it is already determined that some creatures, some animals can predict, can foresee rather, when there is going to be hurricane, when there is going to be flood, when there is going to be earthquake. Nevertheless, they are unable to shelter properly in order to survive. We human, we call ourselves the superior animals, have developed the ability not only to be able to predict, to anticipate, but also to be able to shelter ourselves from those type of natural disasters. Granted, when those happen, some people do lose their lives. Sometimes it's unfortunate. Other time it's just those who decide nothing is going to happen to them and decide to stay behind. But regardless, as a species, we have found a way of protecting ourselves from those type of natural disasters. Ironically, the same type of intelligence that we have, the intelligence that makes us believe that we are superior animals, seem to have blinded us a great deal, because we are the only living organism, the only species who seem to work so feverishly against our own best interest. As mentioned earlier, most of those creatures who are no longer with us, they couldn't predict what would possibly happen. If they could, they would still be alive, because they have, living organisms have the instinct, the intuition of survival. But we human, not only we have a certain level of instinct and intuition as well, but we also have the intelligence and the knowledge to know what would happen, can happen, will happen in the case of natural disaster. And yet, despite the huge effort of previous administration, since the 1970s, an administration was smart enough or concerned enough to create an agency whose main purpose is to protect the environment. Oh yes, the EPA has no other reason to be to protect the environment. Today, we are faced with a dilemma that's baffling, mind-boggling, that we, those who are currently in control of the lever of the government, have been aggressively destroying, handcuffing at times, the very agency whose primary job is to protect us. And the question which keeps coming to me is, are we really that smart? Are we really superior animals? How could we possibly justify being so smart, so superior over the other animals, when the very action that we take go against our very existence? And if you continue on that path, it is fairly certain that the human race, the human species, will also go the way of those other creatures, extinct, so to speak. We'll be right back. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Join me on our next social media broadcast. See you then. When it comes to protecting the environment, it is very baffling to any sound-minded individual trying to understand why the Republican legislators, the Republican elected officials are so gung-ho about completely getting rid of the E.P.A. It is baffling because, as mentioned earlier, that agency is probably the most important agency in the nation. Yes, the most important agency, because it has the most important task to preserve the environment so that we, the human species, can survive, can exist, can continue to exist. That is why also it was shocking that the Trump administration decided to release a report that was produced by independent organization. Independent studies were made, provided to the White House, who released it on Friday, Black Friday it was. And according to a number of Democrats, and of course I'm sure some independent as well, that report was released on Friday, Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, with one reason and one reason alone: to bury the report. And Al Gore says that on an interview according to CBS News. That's a portion of the article that you're currently seeing on your screen. Because, of course, on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, most everyone in the nation is preoccupied looking for a sales. Black Friday sales, they call it. They're looking for a bargain. So the idea of paying attention to the news is very far from everyone's mind. So the Trump administration decided that was the perfect time to release the report. Now, to their credit, we must say that they made no correction on the report. They released it as is. Regardless, the report is in stark contradiction to what Republicans in general, all the Republicans have been peddling messages of, well, there is no such thing as climate change. Look at how cold it is. How could we be talking about climate change? Now, it is baffling to me personally because I fail to understand why in the world that individual who share the same faith as the rest of us, who live on this planet, who have the same needs in terms of basic resources, water, air, why in the world would they want the only planet we have to be destroyed, its environment to be destroyed? It is baffling, isn't it? Now, that report does one thing and one thing alone, only, is to reject Republicans' message about the climate. That report is damning because everything that Republican legislators have been advancing, and the parties, especially at FARC, have been advancing, are rejected by that report. Put simply, the report is saying that, yes, we do have a problem. Environment has a problem. It is no longer a debatable issue. It was never, simply in the Republican circle, for reasons that really are I'm still looking to understand. Because any sound-minded individual, you don't have to have a science major, you don't have to be a genius, you do not have to have a degree in the study of climate in order for you to see the change without having any report in your hand. If you take the environment 20 years ago and compare it to what we have today, you cannot not see a big shift in the way that things are, even during cold season, especially in the Northeast, which is where I live. I can tell you there is a major, big difference. In other words, the changes are palpable, tangible, even to us who do not study, who do not have any knowledge or any expertise in that area. So the debate is over. There is no point in trying to refute the argument. This is over. 2 + 2 are 4. There is no way around it. There is nothing that you can do to change that. This is what it is. So that brings us back to the questions. Why do Republicans put so much effort behind getting rid of the only agency, the most important agency in the nation, the E.P.A? Yes, you may not like what the E.P.A does, and I'm not sure I understand why you would not either, but for whatever reason, because your legislator has been telling you the E.P.A is bad for you, just the same way they were telling you Obamacare was bad for you. Because I'm looking for understanding as to how in the world any individual would want to go against an agency whose job is to clean up the environment and to preserve the natural resources that help us survive. I am baffled, and I would like for someone to give me some understanding how in the world the Republican explain that. It is impossible for me to grasp. So anyone in the Republican Party who has knowledge to explain that to me, I would like to hear from you. Because, as I say, it is impossible for me to comprehend that an agency whose job is to clean up the environment and to preserve the resources, water, air, that we, mankind, human being, need, why would you want to get rid of that agency? It is beyond my understanding. It is beyond logic. So please, you have an answer. I'd like to hear about it. Now, let me show you just a minute or so of some creatures that used to exist. You may have heard of them. In fact, you may have even come across those creatures in movies, of course. And today, you cannot find a single one of those creatures. Take a look.
Since its discovery in the 19th century, dinosaurs have been fascinating the world. Some were so large that their dimensions are hard to believe. Top 10 biggest dinosaurs. Number 10. Giganotosaurus. Like most of the great carnivores, it lived in the Cretaceous period, between 99 and 96 million years in Argentina. It measured 42 feet in length, 13 in height, and weighed 8 tons. His skull was a little more than 4.9 feet. It was so large that it was supposed to feed on Tyrannosaurus-sized prey. However, he had a weakness: speed.
You see those? All right. Your problem, you don't believe that there was ever dinosaur because you just don't believe in anything. Now, there is a big problem with that because, you see, I found something that would also reject your, I should say, ignorance, that would repudiate your ignorance, because this is not just a movie to scare the children. You see, we found those big dinosaurs that you just saw an excerpt of in that first video. We have been finding fossils of those dinosaurs. You know, bones. We have been finding them. So it is very difficult to reject the idea that those creatures used to exist. You see, Republicans in general, they rely exclusively on, but when I say Republican, I want to be certain that I know that there are some constituents who may fall into that category, but for reason that I fail to understand, it's usually the legislators, the pundit, like people on radio, on TV, Fox, those type of people, Rush Limbaugh, and so on. Usually those are the people who have the ability to use resources in order to learn more about those information. Those are the very people who reject even making the effort of finding out that those information are true, but instead go and peddle wrong, distorted information, and sometimes they even lie to their audience in order to make their point. I fail to understand why anyone would do something like that. But to get back to our conversation, the dinosaur did indeed exist. This is a fossil of dinosaur that exposed at museum across the nation, across the world. Those paleontologists, those are the people who actually go out there and actually study and looking for those type of creatures or those type of fossil bones of whether it's animals or humans that live in thousands or hundred thousands of years, and they looking for those traces of bones and so on in order for them to study and see and be able to understand what kind of lives those individual or those animals had at that time. What did they eat and so on and so forth. Those that you're looking for, you're looking at are fossils of those huge dinosaurs. So this is not a product of imagination. This is not just Hollywood. You're looking at Jurassic Park and you say, well, that's just movies. Those creatures, those huge creatures, used to exist. Well, they no longer exist. What happened? The environment. Yes, it boils down to one thing and one thing alone. The environment. The environment was no longer conducive to their lives. Earthquake, flood, volcanoes, all that. Remember I said at the top of this program that we humans have this advantage over those creatures, despite the fact they were that big. But when flood comes, and we're talking about flood, really, tsunami, there is absolutely nothing that they can do about that. Couldn't swim, so they drown. When earthquake comes, they fall into the earth open, they fall, or it could be 1 foot or 2 feet, whatever happened to them. But they're so big they cannot dig themselves out of the predicament that they were in, so they end up dying there. And you have volcanoes and so on. We humans have the advantage of not only knowing when those things are going to happen, because we have the knowledge and we have the technology, but we also have the ability and the resources to get the hell out of the area where any one of those natural disasters is going to happen. And the only reason we can do that is because we have the knowledge it's going to happen. And we have the resources to evacuate the area. Those creatures did not. The environment was not good to them. But ironically, despite our intelligence, we seem to be going down a path which can only be translated in one way, that we want to destroy the environment, which translates into destroying our own species. Because as I mentioned earlier, this is the only environment we have. There is no other place for us to be. That's planet Earth. That's our habitat. If you don't protect it, I'm not sure you can talk about future. Now, if you are a young man, a young woman, you're on your either 20 years, I'm sure if you are 15 years or younger, you should be able to understand those things. And those decisions that those legislators, and I must add, Republican legislators and elected officials, since the conversation about the environment has begun, there has never been a single Democrat who opposed the idea of letting the EPA do the job for which it was created. Not a single one. Republican, time and again, for reason that we yet to understand, have always used the EPA as a punching bag in order to propel their candidacy as president, in order to advance their political agenda. they have always been hitting at the EPA. And yet, the EPA is the most important agency in the nation. That is the agency that protects our way of life, that protects the environment, that protect the resources that we use, most specifically water and air. But Republicans want to get away with it. The question is why? I want someone to explain that to me. Now, last time we talked about air pollution. Our environment are being polluted by a number of factors. The chemicals spewed in the air, mostly by industries, the car that we drive, the planes, the train, etc. All those spew in the air carbon that destroy the ozone layer. And I explained that. I'm not going to come back to that. I strongly suggest you take a look at the People Branch YouTube channel for previous topic that we have discussed. Today, we are going to talk about water pollution. It is important because we human, air is one of the most important resource that we need to survive. We breathe the air. If the air is impure, if the air is polluted, we have a problem. We will die. If you are in a house that being bombarded with carbon monoxide, it doesn't have smell, it doesn't have a color, you don't even know. In a matter of a few minutes, you can die. And the reason is because it's concentrated. You're in a closed space. It is concentrated, then you will suffer very quickly. Now we have that out there in the open, and we don't see people dropping like fly because it's the open air. So instead of us suffering immediately of that problem, it goes in the atmosphere and destroying the layer, the ozone layer, which is, by the way, good for us because that's what protects us against the sun, the radiation of the sun. So which means we are destroying the planet. Everything that we do, we drive a car, we contribute to destroying the planet. We board on a plane, we contribute to destroying the planet. The train contributes to destroying the planet. Everything we do contributes to destroying the planet. Now, the water that we drink is another resource that we need in order to survive. And yet, we are working diligently. I should say the Republicans. I want to be certain that that's very understood. Democrats are not behind that. Not a single Democrat. This is not a bipartisan problem. Republicans exclusively have been behind the idea of destroying the agency, the most important agency in the nation. The only thing I don't understand is why. But Republicans single-handedly, exclusively have been at the center of attempting to get rid of the EPA. Has it not been for Democrats, today maybe there would have not been any EPA. Water pollution. Now you should be concerned Remember the dinosaur I just showed you? They no longer exist because the environment. Today, as I pointed out earlier, we destroy the air that we breathe. And take a look at the People Branch YouTube channel for the discussion on the air pollution. Water. A number of things that we're doing also contribute to pollute the water. And it is not a small thing. And I'm going to show you shortly that our very action, we did not need a report. The report I was showing you earlier, we do not need this report to tell us that we have been destroying nature, the environment. We don't need that report to tell us that. Because we have been doing things that have consequences. Now, for those of you who may not really grasp the importance of when we talk about water pollution, a few things that you should keep in mind. When there is water pollution, some people under the impression that they can escape the consequences of things that they do or that's done to our environment. In fact, that's one of the big selling points by Republican legislators and elected officials to their constituent. And I'm still puzzled by the fact that there are people in the Republican Party constituent. It's one thing that you have politicians that are trying to do something that's benefit them politically, because what they're doing is simply so that they can assure themselves that during campaign for their election or re-election, they get campaign finance money from those industries. But it is baffling, number one, because it's bad regardless, but for the constituent to continue to support those very people that are destroying their way of life. It is impossible to understand that. Every time I try to have a conversation with a Republican about life-related matter, I always have to walk away. And the reason is simple. I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican, but I am a very logical person. And I need to understand why in the world one would want to do things that actually harm you. It's like handing, and I use that analogy a lot because to me that's the only thing I can think of that really expresses the way that Republicans in general behave. It's like handing a knife, a sharper knife, to an individual who threatened to stab you. What do you think is going to happen? You give a sharper knife to someone who say, I'm going to stab you. And that's really how every time Republican constituents behave, because that's what Republican elected officials, legislators, governors, mayors, that's what they do. They tell their constituent that, you see that knife I have? I'm going to stab you with it. But instead of removing the knife from those people, meaning vote them out of office, Republican constituents give them a sharper knife. Because by voting that person back in office, that's really what you do. Give them more time to continue to stab you. I don't understand that. Now, take a look at what water pollution does. And while you're taking a look at the video, I'm going to explain to you, if you extrapolate, you fast forward, you're going to see that it is chilling. Now, you may not be able to relate to dinosaur because you don't care. You were born, and when you were born, there was never any dinosaur around. And even if there were, then we would have to cope with the idea of surviving against those huge creatures. So you may not care about that. Beside the idea that you may not believe the fact that those creatures did exist. I said fact because, yes, we do have proof of their existence. They're fossils. We've been discovering every here and there, in Argentina in particular. So we know those creatures exist. They're no longer with us. But take a look at what water pollution has been doing to our environment. Now, I did mention that we contribute a great deal to the pollution that the environment has suffered of in a lot of the things that we done. Now, the biggest culprits are the industries, chemical industries, dumping waste, industrial waste, radioactive waste, chemical waste in or close to our rivers. Our water streams are being bombarded with impurities, pollutions. This is not small, no matter which way you look at it. The most industries, what they do is they have a pipe turbine that use as conduit to dump the waste, the industrial waste, which contain a lot of radiation, chemical, and dump them into our water system. Now, that water that you're looking at, that's being dumped, and it's going to go into our river, flow into our rivers, go to the sea, and eventually will cause very, very serious damage to our environment. Now, if you don't believe me, take a look at what is been happening for the past decade to our environment. What you are looking at is dead fish that's been washed ashore, not because they were killed, not because they were caught, but because the water is so polluted that it kills them by the hundreds. Yes, across the country, across the world, even fish, whales, shark are being washed ashore, dead, because their habitat, which is the water, their habitat is under attack. I don't know if you see the problem. The problem is grave because we, human, consume sea creatures. Obviously, it's not the whole population of the sea creatures that's washed ashore dead, which means some survive because they were probably not as close in the water that's polluted when the water came and dumped into the sea. They were not as close, so they end up surviving. But guess what? The pollution get into their system. And it is certain that we humans are going to absorb some of those pollution when we consume sea creatures. Now, I have to ask the question again. Why would Republicans want to get rid of the agency whose primary job is to protect our environment? Why? Water pollution do not just kill fish. Pollution is caused by dumping of industrial water, as I was showing you in the previous video. When you dump industrial waste, chemical, radioactive waste, contribute a great deal to polluting our water system. And what does that do? There are a lot of waterborne diseases when you drink the water. And guess what? We do drink the water. We have no choice. Now, you may take comfort by saying, I only drink bottled water. Seriously? If our water is contaminated, even the companies that go to sources to get the water will also pass some form of contamination into the water that you drink. Besides, you do use the water to cook, don't you? You do use the water to take a shower, don't you? Do you also use bottled water to take a shower? Contaminated water can give you diarrhea. You can suffer of cholera. You can carry guinea worm disease in your body, typhoid, dysentery. Now, here's something that may give you pause when you decide to give a sharper knife to a Republican legislator. Each year, there are 3.4 million people who died of any one of those waterborne diseases. 3.4 million people. This is not a small number by any stretch of the imagination. You see those big sea creatures, whale, shark, they die. Water pollution. It's not just small fish. What do you think will happen if that trend continues? Take a guess. Take a guess what would happen. The trend of polluting our water system continue, and Republicans continue to handcuff the EPA to do the job for which it was created. Now it's the fish that suffers the consequences. What happened when it starts sifting through our own, directly through our own personal lives? The reason that those fish you see dead ashore, wash ashore, is because that's their habitat. They have nowhere else to go. That's where they live. So their habitat has been polluted. So they die by the hundreds. And it's not just here in the United States, it's across the world. Explain to me, please, Republicans, why would we not, we as a nation, I'm not talking about Democrat, Republican, or independent, we as a nation, why we are not up in harm pushing against the legislators who are gung-ho about destroying the only agency who can protect our way of life. Why are we not? Why are we simply just look at it as another political issue? It is not another political issue. It is life and death. We do nothing, we'll pay the consequences. If you are a young man or a young woman, 15, 16 and up, now even if you are a child, but I'm assuming as being at that age, you will come at a point where you can make a difference in trying to make certain that the environment is preserved for you. Why would you continue? And that's the part I want to any Republican who has the answer to the question, to my puzzle, I would like to hear from you. Why would you continue to support an individual who is gung-ho about destroying the environment, the only environment, the only habitat we have? Why would you continue to support that individual? I definitely would like to have the answer to that question. Tomorrow, when we come back, we will discuss pollution, light pollution, sound pollution. And at the end of the presentation of pollution in general, we will show you something that's even worse than death. Yes, the pollution have already started to cause a lot of disasters. Today, yes, those you're looking for at are the fish. But as I mentioned earlier, waterborne diseases kill 3.4 million people every year. So it's not just fish that are dying. 3.4 million people each year lose their life because of water pollution. All type of diseases, water diseases we call them, die each year. We as a nation ought to reject the idea of making the environment a political issue. It is not a political issue. It is a human issue. It is a life and death issue. The highest form of ignorance is to reject something you do not know anything about. Pollution is real. It has already caused a lot of damages to other creatures, including human. 3.4 million people lose their lives every year due to waterborne diseases, pollution. It is really time that Republicans drop the Republican hat to join with the Democrat to fight this important fight, which is to preserve the environment that we have. If we don't, the future generation may not live long enough to enjoy whatever is in store for them. But most importantly, as I mentioned earlier, after we take a look at the other form of pollution, lights and sound at this point, and we'll put everything together because there is not a lot to cover on those, but still important, we will show you what it is like to live in a polluted world. It is worse than death. So I invite you to come back here, because this program is broadcasted every day at 2 p.m., every weekday, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. And you will see that this environment issue is not a political issue. It's a matter of life and death. I'll be right back. Join me here on the 4th branch at 10:30 a.m. every Saturday. And every weekday at 2 p.m. This is the 4th branch.
Common sense in a world of chaos.
This program will resume in just a moment.
Don't go anywhere. The 4th branch program will return in just a moment.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
I am MD, host of the 4th Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events, as well as to understand topics of legislations. The 4th Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the 4th Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Join me on our next social media broadcast. See you then. do thank you for taking the time to spend with me to take a look at how important our environment is. As I mentioned, the environment is more important than any political issue, and the EPA is the most important agency in the nation. It is a matter of life and death. As mentioned earlier, we will take a look at tomorrow of light pollution and sound pollution, and the following day we will take a look at the consequences of living in a polluted world. You're not gonna believe it, the damages are worse than death. Until next time, I hope you have a wonderful afternoon or evening, whichever it happens to be. Good day. The Fourth Branch Podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.